this podcast, we will be looking at storytellers, stories, and the reasons that oral storytelling is important in our world today. You would think with all the technology we have available that stories do not have a place anymore, but they are needed more than ever. For in storytelling is where we find truth, we find reality, and we find the heart of what it is to be human. Welcome to the heart of storytelling. My name is Alyssa Curtain, and let's go on an adventure.
Welcome to this week's episode. This week I speak with Jackie Kerin, who is a Victorian storyteller in Australia. Jackie's interview does come with a content warning. There is a very, very brief moment of adult things which may be triggering to some people, but please don't let that detract you from listening to the episode, because she's got some great wisdom in here, but that is your official trigger warning if that is what you are requiring. I hope you enjoy the interview with Jackie. Welcome to this week's episode. This week we're speaking with Jackie Kerin, who is in Newport in Victoria. So tell me how you got your start in storytelling.
Look, I think that's just my natural state. I was a very daydreamy child, and at some point, I know I was very young, I became aware that I could get lost in imagining. And then when I surfaced from that, I could be out in the backyard playing, with the pegs under the clothesline, or collecting snails in the backyard. Very, very young. Definitely around 3.5, 4 years old. And then emerging from that kind of reverie, that realm, I think, oh no, it's gone. And the same with dreaming. I'd surface when I was dreaming, and it was a good dream, and I'd ask for dreams in colour, because there's always talk about colour, colourful dreams. I want to dream in colour. And then you'd wake up and you think, no, I want more, and you go back. So there was this sort of the appeal of the reverie and the world of the imaginary was very strong from a very early age. And then when I was very young, getting into even plays at kindergarten and primary school, I discovered the love of story making. And at primary school, I had a teacher. She taught us scripture, and she would read us stories. I think it was Enid Blyton's Bible stories or something. I've never found the stories, but people have said to me, yes, Enid Blyton did write some Bible stories. And she'd read a story, and then we'd get into groups and we'd have to act it out. And because I love the stories of things like leprosy and and parables, acting out parables, casting seed on sandy ground and rocky ground. And I loved the stories, and I loved again getting into that realm. Years later, when I learned to read, getting lost in books, and then when I finished school, I got into the National Institute of Dramatic Art, and I went up to Sydney because I was living in Melbourne with my family, and I did the 3-year course in dramatic art. It's a diploma of dramatic art. And of course, then I spent 3 years just mucking about with stories. and again, when you've on a stage, because this was all, we did a bit of radio, film and television, but it was mostly theatre. And again, when you're in that hyper-focused place and you're pretending to be someone else and you're in another world, just found it a very pleasurable place to be. So that's sort of how it started. But to jump forward in time to the storytelling. So I graduated from drama school, and it was the mid-1970s, and jumped straight into television because there was a lot of television. And it was fun, it was so much fun. And back then they'd use 3 cameras on the floor in the studios, and there was a whole craft around being aware of which camera was on you. So all your senses are alive for the duration of the takes. But it wasn't long before I realized I was very much in a world of storytelling over which I had no say. Even at drama school, we didn't choose the stories to tell. Somebody else chose the stories, and then the actors are cast rather like the colors from a paint tin. You know, your director dips in the paintbrush and says, "We'll have a bit of blue, a bit of red," and much as I love making television, I often used to come home and think I've spent the week doing something which is so much fun, but I'm not interested. I wouldn't be interested in watching it. So it's like, it became like being part of making meals for people, food which wasn't particularly to your taste, to your liking. And of course, the scripts were all written by men. I mean, I guess there were women writing scripts. I can't remember any of the script writers' names, but over the 10 years that I focused on acting after drama school, I had to fight off my rapist. I got almost strangled and thrown over a balcony. This is all in stories, by the way, not in life. I mean, yeah, women were just tossed around inside those stories. And the last thing I did was, before I took a break, was I was in a horror film, and I was a young woman in a big Gothic kind of house just outside of Melbourne, but I don't think it was ever said it was Melbourne, and it was an aged care place, and there was a psychopath killing off all the old people, and then they kind of get down to me, and I'm fighting for my life and running through this old house, and you know, he finally gets through the door, the bedroom door, and he throws me on the bed, and I hit him on the back with a chair, and I escape out the door, and his mad aunt is chasing me. It was all special effects, and it was all fun making it, because it is fun playing around with all the special effects and fight scenes and whatever. But when it finished, again, I had that nagging thought, if I stopped now, if I died now, is this the last thing I'm leaving in the universe? Turns out this film, which is called Next of Kin, is one of Quentin Tarantino's favourite Australian films.
Really?
Yeah, but yeah, I just, it bothered me. So there I had this, and I went off and I travelled around Europe for a year, and then my partner and I partnered up after that, and we went and lived in the desert. And I had this idea that I should do something more useful with my life. So I did a Bachelor of Education majoring in English and drama. And I got a few points for the drama units because I'd already got a diploma of dramatic art, but I needed the teaching units, and I also needed to do the English. I had to do all the English stuff, the English literature, which I just loved. Love being immersed in all those stories again, and the language, and I love the tutorials where you pick apart the stories, and you know, no, I think they think this, and you can pick apart you can pick apart the characters' psychology, and they don't really exist. So you can project away, you know. I loved it, and did a bit of teaching, and found that wasn't for me, because I really am a bit too much of a wanderer and drifted back into film and television, and moved to I can remember I was living in Western Australia by this stage, and I heard an interview on the radio, and people were talking about oral storytelling and the oral tradition. And I'm like, what? You know, First Nations people, they have oral traditions, but you know, and my daughter's now 32, so this was like mid-90s. There was a bit of a pushback against a lot of the traditional fairy tales, because the female characters were seen as passive and manipulated and all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, oh, but this is difficult. This is like liking sugar. If the fairy tales are bad for us, I still like them. So, a lot of stuff was going on in my brain, you know. And we moved back to Melbourne in the 90s and mid-90s, and I found there was this organisation, Storytelling it wasn't called Storytelling Victoria then. I forget what it was called, but it was the same thing. And I started going to their evenings once a month, and and listening to oral storytelling, and thought, oh, this is interesting. If you choose a story and you tell it, you can't blame anyone. You can't say, oh, the script's terrible or the director's hopeless, or if it wasn't for my fellow actors, I'd be brilliant. You really have to stand beside what you're doing. And if you get it wrong, you just have to say, yeah, I got that one wrong.
Yeah.
Does that
what I forgot to tell you.
Yeah. I learned all sorts of things. I learned I could only tell stories on script for a while. I had to sort of write them down, almost learn them verbatim, because that had been my life. It took me a long time to learn to just learn the bones of the story and then do my own work around it. And
do you remember one of your first stories that you told?
Oh gosh. My friend Bettina Nissen lent me Margaret Reed MacDonald's 20 Tellable Tales. It's quite likely to be something out of 20 Tellable Tales. It could have been The Little Rooster with the diamond button, Coyotes, Crying Song. These were small, learnable stories. And I played around. I used to tell The Six Servants, Wanda Gag. And then, of course, I started to think, well, hang on, this Wanda Gag wrote this story and it is in a book. Should I be telling Wanda Gag's version, or how do I find, dig deeper and find other versions and make one of my own? And is there a source version? Can you say this is the original? I mean, the oral tradition is such a slippery, mercurial thing.
And so you've done a bit of, is it Kamishibai?
Kamishibai, Kami, paper, Shibai theatre.
Say it again, please.
Kami, paper.
Yep.
I've got a shop in Melbourne called Kami, and it sells beautiful Japanese papers. And Shibai means theatre or drama. So it's, it's using picture story cards, which slide in and out of a box. But they aren't just pictures like in a picture book. They have movement. They have a kind of momentum. They are connected to the art of manga or comic book making and animation. So, like all things that look so simple, if you scratch around, you can find there is an art to it.
What drew you to that particular form?
Look, at one point, when I first started telling the stories, I'm trying to think when it would have been, maybe the mid-90s, just on the other side of 1995, people didn't worry. We didn't worry about cultural appropriation or attribution, or you just go to a book and there would be all these fairy tales and folk tales from around the world and collected and anthologized by someone, and off you'd go. And then gradually we started to get a bit itchy and think about attribution and sources and versions and all of that kind of thing. And I started to also think about being a fifth generation born Australia of colonial/settler stock, and becoming very conscious of these anthologies being, I don't know, would you say nationalized? Italian folk tales, French folk tales, German folk tales, Indian folk tales, and very broad African folk tales. Like India's a complex culture, and I suppose Africa is not a country. It was, we're kind of, all these light switches are going on, and I'm thinking, well, what are my stories? And I started to look around and got interested in people like Graham Seal. He was doing anthologies. tall tales. Yeah, looking around at all these things and thinking, are there stories in there that I could say have colonial settler roots? Because that's me. I'm part of this kind of Irish, Scottish, Welsh diaspora. And yeah, and anyway, in one of Graham Seale's books, there is a section on tall tales, and I found this character called Split Dog. And Split Dog is split in two, and when he's stuck back together again, he's 2 legs up and 2 legs down. And I thought, now that sounds like fun. I'd like to tell that story. Found out that there's also, it looks like it might have come from America, Appalachia, maybe. I think that's one of the sources. We had the gold rushes here. You know, people would have come from all over the world. Tried that. I think they could have brought stories with them. You know, Graham Seale has it in as an Australian tall story, along with hoop snakes, min lights, drop bears. Anyway, I thought, how do I do this? And I was thinking about a balloon dog. Maybe I could do it with a balloon. But, you know, also over the years, I've become kind of a bit of a greenie, very much a greenie, I guess. And I'm thinking, no, I don't want to use balloons and plastics and things in my storytelling. And I was chatting to a friend of mine in Melbourne here called Bernard Callio, and I had been reading about Kamishibai, but I hadn't thought of myself as doing it. And Bernard's a comic book maker. And he looked at me and said, Jackie, I'm thinking Kamishibai. I went, oh, yeah, Split Dog is a Kamishibai. But I didn't have a butai, a stage or a box that you need for the cards. I said, would you make the cards for me, Bernard? And he looked at me and said, no, it's a lot of work. No, but Bernard, I'm not a good drawer. I'm not a comic book person. I don't know how to draw. Well, you'll just have to give it a go, Jackie. And yeah, I did. And a friend of mine here in Newport, Ted Smith, he's a carpenter with a wonderful shed, and he made this beautiful wooden butai for me. He said he wouldn't charge me any money for it on a couple of conditions. One was that I tell my first story, which was Split Dog, at his granddaughter's kindergarten. And the other one was that it not languish, that it be used. So for years I shared it with Bernard, who made some Kamishibai stories until he got his own. And only respectful scars. So look after it, in other words. So I did that. I shared it with Bernard. It hasn't never been idle, and it has acquired some scars, but they were accidental. It's been cared for very well. And I did tell stories, the first story at his granddaughter's kindergarten.
Amazing. And so do you do your artwork now? Do you do the slides?
I do. The thing about Kamishibai is understanding how the visuals work. I have asked people to help in the past, but they need to understand how the cards move, and they work very cinematically. You have close-ups and long shots and wide shots, and of course I've got a film and television acting background. I understand all that language, and the stories talk. You can have a lot of fun with voices, like in comics. What are you doing walking along the street on this very hot day without a hat?
A hat? Why would I be wanting to wear a hat?
Well, it's really hot and you might get sunburned. You have fun with all these.
You mostly do it to children or adults or both? Or
look, both. I often say to people, I've got a bit of a beagle brain, you know, as in the beagle will sniff out where the food smells are coming from, and they will get distracted from the course they were on. I'm a bit like that. That's one of the lovely things about, I think, storytelling too, is there's so much to explore. It's like this palace of rooms and corridors, and you know, you can open a door and there's Gothic tales, and then you can go down the corridor and you can find tall stories, and down another, and oh my goodness, there's the Mahabharata. Where do I start? It's huge. There's so much. There's so much to explore, and and I've always liked doodling and drawing. I'm not brilliant, but I'm not super bad. And the more I've done, I find collage is good. That comet and water pencils, and I've been working out what works for me. And again, you know, it's the same headspace that I enjoyed as a 4-year-old. It's that sitting down and working through an imaginary, creative kind of puzzle. And where my beagle brain has led me is to a lot of stories about the environment. So, I have quite a few stories now about, because of where I live, about migratory birds, because I live on an area where you do too in Western Australia, where the migratory shorebirds come and they breed in the Arctic tundra and they come down here during our summer. And so I started working with our local wetlands centre and doing stories. And, I've got a little story there about a cuckoo. A lot of people don't know about cuckoos and they think of cuckoo clocks. They don't know that Australia has lots of cuckoos. And they're nest parasites, their eggs in other birds' nests. And so I've got a little story about that. Also, I got a story that my friend Lorraine Callow illustrated for me. She's a really good illustrator about the transportation of plants to Australia during the colonial era. I wanted, and so I do these for adults and children. It's the story of the Wardian case, these glass and wooden boxes that brought plants and seeds from all around the world to Australia in the thousands upon millions. I got the idea when listening to a fantastic acknowledgement of country it was. An Aboriginal man, not from this place, from another place. So he was acknowledging the country and he was asking us to picture what it might have been like. And I thought, I don't know if they can picture what it might have been like, because I think a lot of people here have no idea. They don't realise that bananas and pineapples and roses and parsley and oranges and lemons and camellias and japonicas, proteas, and they all come from somewhere else. So when and how did they come here? So I had a lot of fun doing that story. And I'm going to get back to the whole stories.
Are you writing these stories or are you sourcing them from somewhere?
No, I write them.
Amazing.
So the amazing case of Dr. Ward, that I wrote, that my source material for that was a booklet that Dr. Ward had published, I think it was 1854, and it was called On the Growth of Plants in Closely Glazed Cases.
Oh, wow, that's really fascinating.
And that talks about, and he talks about his experiments between London and the Sydney Botanic Gardens. And in the back of his book, he's got correspondence between him and the captain of the ship. It was called the Persian, that brought the first cases out to Sydney Botanic Gardens. And when they arrived and plants were alive and thriving, then they sent some Australian plants back to England. And then from then on, it kind of exploded. And then we had the terrarium phase, which we still have. People still love their terrariums. But it goes back to this time. And the storytelling, I often say this when I'm talking to people, storytelling somehow loosened my tongue. As I said before, I had to learn not to be on script, to learn just to speak, do you say, extemporaneously around a subject. And that somehow loosened a tongue inside my head, which loosened my writer's voice. And I found myself writing for the first time. And since then, since 2009, I've had 5 non-fiction children's picture books published, and they have all been influenced by my work with oral storytelling. The first one was about in Melbourne we have this famous racehorse called Farlap, who is in the Melbourne Museum. He's now a taxidermy, and he died in the 1932 or something. I can't remember.
I think it's the 30s.
And so I wanted to write the story of Farlap. And of course we have in Australia this, as other countries do too, we have this amazing tradition of rhyming verse where people encoded stories into rhyme when more people were illiterate than literate. And the memorizing and composing of verse was a popular pastime. And I thought, and also horses are very rhythmical creatures. So I thought, Jackie, you want to do the story of Farlap? Sorry, but you've got to do it in rhyming verse.
That's not challenging at all.
Challenging at all. And but I would never have done it if it hadn't been for splashing about in storytelling traditions. And there's a wonderful quote. I can't get it up here. It's in Banjo Patterson read a book, Australian, it's an anthology of, I can't remember what it was called. Anyway, in the preface, there's this lovely quote about the oral tradition. Thinking of a time, when more people, when people, composed stories, put them into verse and published them as broadsheets or pamphlets. When Farlap died, within 48 hours, someone had written a poem and was handing it outside in front of the State Library of Victoria.
Wow.
And it's still around. Someone got a copy of it. I've got a copy of it somewhere.
Amazing.
But also, I was going to say too, in the space between traveling overseas, make the horror movie, then traveling overseas, I lived on and off for a couple of years in Central Australia, and with my partner, and spent a solid year west of Alice Springs, out in a community near the WA border. And of course, I learnt there firsthand the power and strength of the oral tradition. And because that's where people are living on living country. There was still a lot of ceremonies going on and a lot of storytelling. So that really got my head thinking too about stories and the strength of the oral tradition.
Well, one of the things that you said earlier was around being, what did you say, lost in imagining. I love that description, and I just wonder, how important is imagination, do you think, to humans, really?
Gee, I don't know. I think it plays many, many roles. It can help us disassociate in trauma. It can help us in so many ways, like with pain, with joy. I think it can both lower our heart rate and increase our heart rate.
I ask because I'm seeing as a teacher that kids are not as imaginative as they used to be. They don't seem to have very active imaginations, modern children. And I wonder what the effect of that's going to be. But then I also think how wonderful our role as storytellers is in being able to foster imagination for a generation that's grown up with devices, So
well, we can imagine our way out of phobias, can't we?
Yeah.
When you I mean, I don't have a disabling phobia, but I have talked to people who have, and all the the cognitive behavioral stuff, that how we apply our imagination to humaning, and how we use stories to inculcate, is that the word, compassion, empathy. We use our imagination to give us strength to, there's pole vaulters and things like that, like the divers doing those amazing physical skills. I mean, often I believe they are imagining themselves.
They've done studies on that, and that visualization makes all the same muscles trigger, even if they're not doing it. I think imagination is one of those areas that we don't place a lot of value on, but we all know it's quite important. It's like we don't talk about it. It's a bit like death, I suppose. It's a really important aspect of life, but we don't put funding into imagination skills, and we don't foster imagination. It's part of education, or but it's imagination that will get us out of the climate crisis. It's imagination and imagining new possibilities that will solve all the world's problems. And was just going on a bit of a wander through the imagination.
Yes, without imagination, we wouldn't have the arts, I guess. So turn off your music, turn your pictures to the wall. close your books,
Yeah.
disconnect from your screens, no Netflix, no whatever, no platforms. Take away beautiful landscaped gardens, take away architecture,
Cooking.
take it all away.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think we can. Yeah. So
Yeah. It brings joy to life, I suppose. So this podcast is called The Heart of Storytelling. So what do you think is at the heart of storytelling? And why do we need it today?
I don't know. Sometimes I think the question is, why do I need it? And can I extrapolate that my needs are not so specific that it's a core human thing? So if I need it, does everybody else need it? I know speaking for myself, storytelling, the heart of storytelling, I think is very grounding. Here I'm talking about these reveries and these wandering around imaginary palaces, but having said all that, I also find it very grounding. There's something very solid at the heart of storytelling. And I don't know, sometimes when I've been to schools and I've talked to kids and I've said, some of the stories I tell, I know are really, really old. And if the story was a thing and I could hold it in my hand, I would have to have white gloves on and I'd have to have security guards. It would have arrived at the school in a security van. And if it was on display, it would be in a museum with thick glass and a security camera. They're that old. And even the stories that we tell, I read constantly. I'm always reading. And the more I've learned about the oral tradition, the more I see the connections to even a very contemporary crime fiction or I don't know, whatever. They have roots. If you look, you will see these fine roots going right back into those condensed oral tales that we love to play with. So at the heart of storytelling to me is maybe something very solid and hard, like a diamond, indestructible.
Yeah.
It seems to be indestructible. When people flee their homes because of war or fire or flood and can take nothing, they will still take these intangibles. They'll take stories and they'll take folk tales, they'll take spiritual stories, they'll take pourquoi stories, they'll take family stories. There'll be a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I'll say, I can't remember. Was he a great uncle or a great great uncle? And was it a button or was it a diamond? And was it they'll take shards. But the storytellers, people who have these amazing memories, they'll take whole slabs of stories. Yeah.
So you've said you like telling environmental stories. Are there any other types of stories that you really like telling?
I like telling lots of different kinds of stories. It's having the opportunity to tell them.
This is true.
Often the sorts of stories you tell are shaped by the request. Like when I found those old photos from 2012 from the Monash Fairy Tale Salon, I also found some photographs of myself that I'd completely forgotten about. And there I am in a kindergarten. And not a kindergarten, a childcare centre. And these are babies under 12 months, some just over 12 months. They're sitting in their plastic high chairs. They're like little Daleks. And I'm sitting there and I'm, I never imagined, I wouldn't, when I was at drama school studying Shakespeare and Noel Coward and Jack Hibbard, and I never would have imagined myself taking those skills into an early childcare centre and telling stories to babies sitting there like little characters out of the Doctor Who, doing Five Little Ducks and felt stories. And but that was what was asked of me. And the more I mean, I've got to say too, the more I just realized how incredibly valuable and wonderful this work is, and what a privilege. But yeah, that wasn't my idea. That stories took me there, and I ended up, was this being in the storytelling community space. That's what took me into this realm. And I did a lot for a lot of years. I did a lot of early childhood storytelling, not a lot of babies, but certainly 2.5 and up. So yeah, you develop a repertoire for those kids, and and you have a storytelling night, but you tend to tell stories that are under 10 minutes, so you don't get to tell a kind of more epic stories or bigger stories. Or
it's harder to tell those big ones.
What's the question? What sort of stories I like to tell?
Yes.
The stories that are tripping off my tongue at the time.
Yeah, okay, so you've got quite a collection you can draw from then.
Yeah. And I'm very keen. I've been to a few storytelling festivals in India, Malaysia, been to conferences in Europe, and in Rome I went to Fest, and I was very conscious, particularly in Europe, people being Greek or Italian or Swedish or whatever, again, the sort of nationalization of stories and storytellers, and thinking, gosh, if you're part of this sort of colonial diaspora, kind of don't think of ourselves like that, or I don't.
No.
And
it is tricky. I'm seventh generation, so I completely get it.
Something that we should explore and celebrate. But one French storyteller said to me, "Why don't you tell Aboriginal fairy tales?" And I thought, I don't know where to begin with that question. And I was just shocked at that he hadn't thought about colonialism. France having such a history of colonizing countries that perhaps it's not part of their education. I don't know. I was just kind of gobsmacked by the question. And then someone said to me, so what is your heritage? And I said, well, a long time ago, Irish, Welsh, Scottish. Well, you should tell those stories. They're your stories. And I said, no, I've been to those places, but I'm a tourist. They're not my...
I think it's the real dilemma for, Australia, New Zealand and North Americans. It's the same dilemma, whose stories can we tell and whose stories do we tell, and can we find stories that are uniquely ours, that aren't displacing other people? It's a real challenge, I think, and I don't know that there's an easy solution to it.
And there is that thing, I often think, back in the day, before there were countries, before there were borders and passports, two people meet on a road and share a fire, break bread together. One tells a story to one, and then the other one tells a story to the other, and off we go our separate ways the next day, taking each other's stories, changing the names, changing the clothes, putting it into another language.
Forgetting aspects, forgetting things, or adding things. And stories
thinking,
do travel.
I'm not going to have a camel in the story because no one's going to know what a camel is where I'm from. I'm going to change it into a goat. And so you get, when you look at stories, when you read these anthologies, you think, I can remember reading a story, and it was in an anthology, and it was just under an African story, and it was about these robbers who had this stash of gold, and there were 3 of them, and one wanted, they were all plotting to kill the others so they could have all the gold. And so one goes off and gets a bottle of wine or a drink or whatever and brings it back, and they all get poisoned. Something like that. I can't remember the details, but years and years, and that's a pretty cool story. And years later, friends and I were doing a project on the Canterbury Tales, and there is the tale. It's like 13th century England, and I'm thinking, these stories were on the wind.
They travel.
Was it the Pardoner's Tale? It's the plague, and And
so you said something a second ago. You said you've seen how valuable the work is. Can you talk more about that, please?
I've had I say to people I meet who are starting out telling stories, I say, for goodness sake, keep a journal, because I didn't. And I've had so many amazing experiences over the years. Because this is an example. I'm in a library and I'm telling a story, and it's one of those stories about creating the reality that you would like to inhabit. And it's an old artist, and he's painting a picture, and I'm a gardener, and he's painting a beautiful garden and a house at the back. Right at the back of the garden is a path going through the garden up into the house. And I'm describing this garden, and this child bursts into tears and crawls onto my lap and wraps their arms around me and is just sobbing. And I got a bit worried. And then the child was saying, "It's so beautiful. I can see the garden. I can see the garden." And the power of, we talked about imagination before, of imagining the reality and then stepping into it. You know, it's just, there's a lot of stories along that theme. I mean, that was one of the, you know, there's all these, in a kindergarten, a little kid watching my hands, and I'm doing string stories and finger stories and using finger puppets, and suddenly he grabs my hands and goes, "Hands, hands." Hands. Anyway, I go back a week later to the same kindergartner, because I did one group and then the other, and the teacher said, the little boy was Spanish speaking, and she said that was the moment the language clicked.
Oh,
He wasn't
wow.
speaking any English at the kinder. His parents are speaking Spanish at home. They want him to speak English at the kinder. And suddenly the penny dropped. Hands, hands. And they said, "We haven't been able to shut him up." And I just thought, wow, and I was part of that. You know, I was there, you know, mine were the hands that triggered that. Look, there's just so many, playing around with inserting different languages into stories. Again, it was a Spanish Kamishibai I tell, and I just learned a few words in Spanish, and I'm crossing from the multi-purpose room to the staff room, and this boy comes up and starts muttering to me in Spanish, and I'm saying, "No, I can't speak Spanish," and the teacher's saying, that they have students at the school who are bilingual or multilingual in some cases. And it's like they're ashamed of this superpower. It was amazing that he actually came up, that particular boy was coming up and letting me know that he was a Spanish speaker. Like, I don't know, I felt really good when that sort of thing happens.
But you're letting people see themselves in the story then, aren't you?
Yes.
If you're doing that. It's really, really powerful.
Stories. Yeah, the nature stories, doing stories for friends groups, and acknowledging the volunteer army that is doing all the a lot of the revegetation, a lot of cleaning up of the plastics, a lot of the doing these stories, some of these stories about the migratory birds. I've had one of my local rangers saying, you know, we do all this work and we have a whole lot of people who get it, but we can't seem to communicate the message beyond our bubble. And storytelling can be the link, or one of the links, which is pretty cool.
It's pretty powerful is what it is.
It is pretty powerful, and storytellers have this amazing way of connecting through these global organizations, which is also extraordinary. And I've been tapping into that with my nature storytelling, because we are on what's called the East Asian Australasian Flyway, and our birds travel across the eastern edge of Asia. There are so many countries and languages along the way, you know, going across, you know, the islands, you know, Papua New Guinea, right through Malaysia and the Philippines and Japan and Thailand and China and Mongolia. And with Zoom and with organizations like FEAST, the Federation of Asian Storytelling, I keep thinking, I'm meeting friends along the flyway through storytelling.
And then you connected through story and the birds, which is wonderful.
Isn't it? Yeah.
So you said to keep a journal for beginner storytellers. Do you have any other advice for emerging and beginner tellers?
who am I to give advice? One is, well, the reason I say to keep a journal is because this magical things happen and they're so wonderful that you just they're just nice to hold on for the rest of your life, really. Kids giving you gifts, yeah, all sorts of things. Going to special, oh goodness me, I was in a specialist school, kids with autism, and I was doing the old woman who swallowed a fly, and I have a big puppet, and I have the animals, and I was using Auslan just for the animals. I'm not an Auslan speaker, but I thought if I'm going to use gesture, I might as well use gesture that is a language, you know. And so I'm doing spider and this and dog and cat and bird, and finished, and the kids all leave the room except one little kid who's up the back of the room. He would have been about 12, I guess, 11. And I can still see him. And the teachers had to come back, and he'd come up to me, and he was pointing, and I was saying, oh, the sign. So I was doing spider and trying spider, and he was copying me. And the teacher said to me, he doesn't communicate with anybody. Like, this is unbelievable. And I thought, no, it's not me, it's the story.
Yes.
It's storytelling, you know, like it's that I have developed a skill doing this. And just, yeah, you come away high as a kite.
It transcends language, doesn't it?
What happened there? So yeah, that's why the journal. The other thing is just I meet storytellers who are very reluctant because they want to be paid all the time. This is another problem. And I often say, look, try and work out what you want to be paid for, and what you will do. Like like I said before, Newport Storytellers, which I run, comes under a folk club, which is primarily a music club. Now, there's professional musicians in that club, and one of them said to me, I either practice at home alone in my lounge room and play my guitar to the cushions and the curtains, or I come along to the folk club and I play with other people. And being part of the club means sometimes I do things for free, at events. Also busk, they were saying. I go out and I busk. I earn a few coins, but in busking, I'm also practicing. But I have met storytellers in the past who they put money as a bar. I think you have to find ways to keep practicing, whatever that is, because the cushions and the curtains just don't cut it. You've just got to keep up your miles with people. And I've developed my own little kind of set of rules around that. I do a lot in my community. I'm getting old now, so I don't think about it so much, but pre-COVID, when I was still working a lot, I think, okay, well, if it's in my community, depending what it is, I'll do that for nothing. I don't want to go too many days or weeks without telling stories, whether they're the child set for early childhood or whether they're the stories for older people. You just have to keep telling. Yeah,
amazing. That's great advice. So if people want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they find you?
You can go, I have a website, jackiekerin.com.au. That's kind of a thing that sits there. I have a Facebook, Jackie Kerin Storyteller. And together with a couple of others, with Adrian Newington and M. Chandler, we run Newport Storytellers that I was mentioning before, under the Newport Fiddle and Folk Club. And you can find our page on the Newport, or you can find the link if you go to our Facebook page, Newport Storytellers, and you can explore that, find the link, go to the Folk Club. You'll see we've got podcasts. There's some videos there of work we've done. Yeah, we're an absolute mix. We're a mix of people who earn money telling stories, and we're people who are really, really old, like really old. And one of our storytellers, amazing woman, is pretty non-verbal now, but still comes to storytellers with a carer, and again, that is a very, very precious thing.
Amazing.
And I figure we are working within the folk tradition, and if my view is, we're not a professional group, we're a story club, I guess, story community. I'm thinking I don't know, I've often thought, Alyssa, if you're working with the folk tradition and you say, I'm a professional, I don't want to hang about with that mob because they're not very good, you're cutting yourself off from the roots.
Yeah. Yeah. Groups are of all levels.
Yeah.
That's the nature of society anyway. Everyone's from different.
Yeah. People are very good at hierarchies. Even in the beautiful folk tradition, they'll find a way to create a hierarchy.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jackie. This has been really great.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's our episode for today. I hope you've enjoyed learning about storytelling and folktale, fairy tale, myth, legend, or personal tales, wonder tales, all sorts of stories, and the art of storytelling and why we really need to continue using it today. You can find more information about me at alyssaCurtain.com or at Alyssa Curtain Stories on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube and TikTok. I hope that you can find your heart in storytelling.